everyone. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of When I Grow Up. On today's episode, I'm excited to introduce you guys, if you don't already know her, to Grace Song. Hey, Grace, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Blair?
I'm great. Thanks for joining me today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's a little bit belated, I feel like. I have always wanted to have you on, but I know you're a busy woman, doing all kinds of things at your workplace that you're here to tell me about today, but also just a little bit of information for those that don't know who Grace is. We are from the Atlanta area, if you're just joining us, and we actually go to church together, but not just that. Grace is the wife of our head EM pastor at the church that both of us attend. So not only is she a mom, she's also a pastor's wife, and she also is a boss lady, and that's why she's here today to tell us more about what she does. So without further ado, Grace, tell us, what do you do on your day-to-day other than all the other things I already named?
So what do I do? Well, my title, just to start off with, is a program manager. And it's kind of it's an ambiguous role, I think, because it's more of a skill set than like a specialized skill. So a program manager is essentially a project manager that manages kind of a group or series of projects that kind of have a similar theme. So what I do is I work at a company called SalesLoft, and it's a technology company that services the sales industry so that sellers can sell better. And then that way people on the receiving end have a better buying experience too. So I know a lot of times people think of sales as like cold calls and being a profession that like nobody really wants to do. And SalesLoft is trying to change that, make it more personal and relationship based. So what I do is I work with our most strategic accounts, for example, like LinkedIn, where, we have a commitment and a relationship to them to not only deliver on the technology, but also different services that they need to make the user experience better. And with these big companies, they have a lot of needs and like custom work or just white glove treatment that they're willing to kind of invest into. So that's where I get to come in and make sure we have like different project managers and folks and just help us execute on what we're supposed to deliver to these customers.
Okay, so I'm just going to rewind a little bit because that was a lot. So SalesLoft itself, right? It's not a startup anymore, but it's a tech company. Now, I was telling you before the interview that I was Googling SalesLoft because not just from you, I just know that it is a very large company that has grown immensely over the years since its genesis. And it's a very competitive company from what I understand. But now what I read and the thoughts in my head, I feel like are not connecting. But is SalesLoft is it a program that like your client like pays for or what? I don't know. It said the word that was used on Google was platform. And so I just didn't know what that meant.
Yeah, I mean, it's a platform, it's a tool, it's an app, but it's essentially functions out of Chrome. So it's a software that people buy, and it layers on top of a CRM like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics.
What's a CRM?
That's a good question. So CRM is it's like a customer relationship management tool where people are trying to manage all the contacts, whether they're existing customers or desired customers like prospects. And it's like massive companies have thousands and thousands of contacts, and it's really hard to manage. So SalesLoft is kind of a tool that integrates into the CRM, and it helps manage all the contacts and, just again, make that buying experience a lot better and not just like random ad hoc, like spam messages that don't mean anything from like the other person's experience.
I see. Okay. So
I know it's very complicated.
Okay, could you like make it more like tangible for me. So like, could you give me, like, so you used LinkedIn, right? But like, yeah, how does LinkedIn use SalesLoft then?
Okay. So actually, let me pivot the illustration.
Okay.
For example, church, right?
Okay.
There are people that come through and people come and go, or there are people where if we're doing a certain type of mass outreach and we want people to engage with us, we might have like their email addresses, right? So let's say you have thousands of people that you can reach out to, but there might be a certain event that's coming up that you want to engage with a certain subset of those people. So if you're like doing a children's ministry, you want to target people that fit a certain profile and send out personalized communication to say, hey, we're doing this thing for Easter. We love, if you can drop by, or it's like a targeted campaign in some way, but more on like not like a marketing like blast newsletter, but just that one-to-one like communication where SalesLoft will pull in like a contact, and there might be kind of like a template message like, hey, first name, like we'd love to see you come to X event. But you might be able to see like that there's something going on in their company or in their life, and you can pull that in and personalize the message. Yeah. So you kind of customize that template to make it a little bit more real. So when I see it as, a mom, I might be like, oh, like this person knows I have a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they're doing this event. Like, I'm kind of interested. So again, it's not just mass blasting like the same communication to people, but it's slightly targeted, it's slightly customized, and it's a little bit more meaningful. Does that make sense?
I see. So that's where you were saying how SalesLoft is able to make, the buyer and user experience better for everybody because it has these different types of elements that it's difficult to do if you have thousands and thousands of clients.
Right. So it helps to manage and scale everything. And let's say there's something you're doing really well, and you're getting a lot of success. And again, this is to help scale like a big organization. So if there's like 2 other like children's ministry pastors, and let's say they're new and they don't know what works, but they're able to like look at what you've done and kind of glean from your success, then you can replicate that and they can start kind of doing the same thing that you're doing. So it's like a rinse and repeat. It scales. You're able to do it like at a bigger level with more people. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. That makes sense. Man, I mean, I say the same thing over and over again in all my podcasts. It's like, I had no idea, like those things exist. Like, that's really cool. Okay, so you were saying that you are basically a project manager, a program manager for sales. So do you have a team that you work with? I would imagine there are several teams within SalesLoft, but specifically, what does your day-to-day look like? What does that consist of?
So I work with everyone else in our organization.
Oh, really? Okay, my assumptions were incorrect.
So, it's okay. So project managers by nature, they work in cross-functional teams a lot of times. So for me, I'll work with like our sales executives, are like people like once you close the deal and you buy the software, there's people that do the implementation or onboarding of those clients. So I'll work with those consultants. And then once, a customer is fully onboarded and all their technical stuff is, squared away, they'll transition over into like the customer success. So kind of like the account manager role. So I work with all those people for each account. So for LinkedIn, we have a program team, and then I help manage all those people internally, as well as the client side of the program team to make sure we're all like in sync and in communication and everybody knows what's coming up. We can prepare for it, plan for it. So we'll have like multiple series of project plans to make sure that ultimately the customer is successful and that we're executing seamlessly.
So basically, you're just making sure everyone is doing their job to
Yes,
get it done and
yes,
deliver.
yes.
That is a humongous job. But I just like to say, what I know about Grace is that this is her forte. Like, this is like no false humility. Like, she is good at what she does. Like, I know that whenever there's a ministry meeting or something, like I can always count on Grace to like, like check things off the list and make sure that everyone is on the same page, and not only that, doing it efficiently. So, what I really would love to know is like, is this something that you kind of fell into, or how did you get into project management in this capacity
Mhm.
for such a large company as well? I guess, can you take me back to the beginning, like even your
Yeah,
college days?
right, right. No, and this is the part where I get really excited to tell my story, because project management was not something that I knew about. And it was something where I was like, I wish somebody would have told me in
Mm.
college that this is a thing. Um, so my background is I studied business, and I doubled in management and marketing. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, but I had an interest in business. I figured it was a really practical major. And what, you can find a job anywhere with a business degree, I think, coming out of college. So being the practical person that I am, that's what I studied. And then once I graduated, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I thought maybe God will call me to missions and I can do business in the mission field.
Mm.
And that didn't quite happen. I mean, I got to go and serve like out in Korea and do like a little English Bible camp thing. And, that's where Joe and I became really good friends. And, the rest of that is history. And I got to go on like a really short-term mission trip to China. And I was like, I don't know. I just wanted to be open. And after I decided to, I graduated, I decided to take a year off and figure out, what are the options that are out there in terms of, again, that whole business mission field mindset. And I think what I learned that year is that work is missions, and wherever we go, we're all called to be missionaries. And so I think I was able to realize that the business field and the workplace is my mission field. So knowing that, I think it gave me a lot of intentionality and focus to just know in the back of my mind, wherever I decided to go work, like that's where God's called me to be faithful and to love my neighbors and to care. So, the first job that I landed out of college was for Chicago Public Schools, which is a massive organization that runs over 600 schools in Chicago. And I started there as an intern / executive assistant doing admin work for this random director. And I had no experience. I just knew I was organized. I liked planning things, and admin work seemed interesting to me. And so I was there for almost about 3 years. And it was great. I learned a lot. And I mean, there were some hard moments too, for sure, when you're working for a government organization. And
like what?
There's lots of politics involved. Yeah. And so that was my first job out of college. And I felt like, oh, maybe this is my calling. Maybe this is what I'm meant to do, to be an executive assistant and support, a leader who has a vision and wants to execute. And,
So sorry,
yeah,
can I interrupt your story
yeah.
just real quick? So you said you felt like, this might be your calling, and I'm assuming you're alluding to the fact that you really loved it.
hmm
But like, what about it at that time were you like, this is my calling? Because like, it is, I feel like it is definitely because, you have to be able to support whoever it is that you're assisting in a way
hmm
that is done well, and not everyone can do that. So what did
Yeah.
you love about it so much?
I loved, I loved serving my boss.
Mm.
I love that he needed my help to stay organized, to stay on top of everything so that he could make a bigger impact in his
Wow.
role.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was not just seeing myself like in the background doing random busy work, but it was like, it meant like me keeping him organized and keeping our team organized and making sure everything was running on track,
Mm.
so that he could help with these schools and making sure we were executing on important programs that mattered.
Yeah, yeah. How did you like get a job like that right out of college? I just feel like that would be a competitive job
That's a
offer, but
great question. So I found the job through a temp agency.
oh, wow. Okay.
hmm So that was very, very random. And initially, like I did a couple of other temp, like really short term projects or like gigs or contracts for random companies in Chicago because that's where I was living at the time. So I got to like, just kind of hop around from like massive building to building inside the city, and it was fun. I felt important, or somebody just kind of living that city life and working in the city, and yeah, so that's how I randomly landed at CPS, and then eventually, yeah, I mean, my boss and I, we worked really well together. He trusted me,
Mm.
and so with temp agencies, it's interesting because um, they kind of they own your contract. So technically, like the company that like you get outsourced to, they have to buy it out to actually like put you under their like budget and salary. So I think about after like a year or so, my boss bought out my contract, and then I was like an official like government employee.
Oh,
So
wow. Wow.
yeah,
I feel like that says a lot, man.
just
Okay, but
favor. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt you, but you
you're
can
good.
continue with your story now.
Yeah, so I was there like about I think 2.5, almost 3 years, and then I gave up my nice government job to get married and move down to Atlanta, and then I was unemployed again for like 6 months. I had um, I had no leads, and looking for a job, it's like really hard. It's really stressful. You feel like you're putting your heart out on the line for every company that you apply to. And, you feel so exposed. And yeah, and it was kind of a hard season. And someone I knew, they were working at the Georgia Aquarium, and they were like, hey, we need a coordinator to work in our sales department. Are you interested? So I was like, I don't know. I didn't necessarily have like a passion for the aquarium
The
or fish
fish.
or dolphins, But at the same time, I was like, well, I might as well try it. So I interviewed, and they obviously gave me the job, and I took it. And I was doing a lot more admin work too, just helping book massive reservations for companies and schools and tour
Mm.
groups, and yeah, it was just really supporting our sales people who were kind of out on the field, making phone calls, booking these big reservations. And I was just kind of there, like executing. So for school reservations, we would print out all the tickets and like, meet the schools on the curb. And I don't know, it was just a lot of busy work.
Yeah.
And admittedly, I got really comfortable. It was really easy, but it wasn't really challenging either. And I didn't really know where to go from there. And it's like, okay, well, maybe this is just the extent of my career path, is just to focus on admin work. And so as Joe was transitioning out of the church that he was serving at, we kind of had an opportunity to do whatever we want, or, move out of Georgia and relocate to a different city and, just try something completely different. And so I think the fact that we were so open gave me just kind of an open mind to trying something new. And then I know you had Jonathan on not too long ago. And so Jonathan was working at the startup called N2M. And he had always told me about, how much he loves his startup. And, they have all these perks and they do all these things. And he's always talking about it. And I remember one day he was like, you should apply. I was like, but I have no background, in anything. It was a marketing startup company, and I had a background in marketing. So I was like, okay, well, I'll give it a shot. I have nothing to lose. And I remember I went to their job site, and the only job posting that they had available was an internship position. So at this point, I'm wondering if I need to start over as an intern. And at this point, timeline wise, I think I'm roughly like 29 years old, and thinking like, wow, like, am I really gonna start as an intern? And then I applied, and I went in, I met with Jason, who, is a mentor to both Jonathan and myself. And I met with him. He told me all about the company. And at the end of it, he was like, so you want to work here? And I was like, is this an interview? Like, what is happening? And I said yes. And I had no idea what I signed up for. And they're like, okay, cool. Like, we think you'd be really good at project management. And then I was like, what's that? I was really confused. I remember I came home, I started Googling project management, and like Joe signed me up for like a project management, like crash course class. And like, it was, I don't know, it just came out of nowhere. I had no idea what it was. And then day one, I came into the company, and they're like, okay, well, like, we need to implement this software, this project management software for the entire team. And I think at the time there were maybe like 20 of us, and they didn't have a project management tool or like process, and everybody was all over the place, kind of operating in their own silos. And so where I got to come in was like understand, like, from sales and like customer support all the way down to engineering and developers, like what were priorities and how to make sure we were getting things done, and making sure it was the most important thing. Because a lot of times, like, sales will be like, this is the most important thing.
Sure.
And, it's to help close a big deal. And then developers, they'll see like a different, definition of what's important to them. So kind of meeting everybody in the middle and saying like, this is the most important, and helping prioritize, and keeping everyone on track. So that was kind of the beginning of my project management journey.
Yeah. So like, you didn't really know what it was going in, and on your first day on the job, as things are kind of being explained to you, I'm curious, like, did things like kind of click for you immediately? Like, did you already feel like, oh, this is it? Or what, like what? Because like, I think I'd be so overwhelmed, like, but that's just not who I am. So, but yeah, like, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, the story of my life, and you know, a lot of my friends know this, is I feel like I've always just gotten thrown into the most like random situations, like my tagline for every time I've started a new role is I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's just been my life the last I don't know, almost 7 years. Just learning to be okay with uncertainty, even though it makes me kind of uncomfortable and squirming at times. Learning how to just assess the next step and figure out what needs to get done. I don't necessarily need to know the whole plan or how it's been done before, or where we're going, but just seeing what's the biggest need and assessing it and coming up with a plan to execute it. So yeah, when I started at M2M, I had no idea what I was doing, but I just knew I would just figure out a problem and try to solve for it.
Wow.
And
I guess it was a startup too, so they were still figuring things out as well.
Yes. Yeah, and with startups, like everybody wears like 5 different hats.
Sure.
And so even while I was there, I was helping with like our content marketing and working with our clients, and you know, I just got put on random like projects and assignments, and yeah, it's again just randomness and knowing how to just figure things out. I think even when I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing, I think is how I've managed to come this far.
No, but like even though it was like you had to wear different hats, like from what I'm hearing, like your experience at M2M really prepared you for what is to come, because like having to wear those different hats, and Jonathan shared when he was on shared a similar sentiment, you know, like you just did everything, and so now you have your foot in everything and you kind of know the bits and pieces, and
Yes.
but yeah, like that's so how did your job evolve into what it is today after your experience at M2M?
Yeah. So well, okay, let's see here. Just thinking back. So after M2M, we got bought out by another marketing company. And then with that came like shifts in leadership, and the CEO of M2M went and took on another leadership position at a company called Naranja, which was also a startup. And so, yeah, the CEO called me and he said, "Oh, I need someone to run ops for me, director of ops position." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "Are you interested?" And I was like, "So what does this entail?" I had no idea what I was doing. But, you know, I trusted the CEO. And so I decided to transition away from M2M and came on board to help run operations. Again, it's that same theme of I have no idea what I'm doing. But it was helping my CEO execute his vision. And so it was interesting. At one point, I was like trying to help launch like an employee engagement survey. It's called like an ENPS survey. I had no idea what that was, but I had to Google it and figure it out and come up with like, you know, the tool from SurveyMonkey to like come up with the questions and send it out to all these people, and just getting thrown into random projects. So I was there for about 6 months, only 6 months. And then sadly, my CEO left. So once he left, the culture of the company started kind of tanking, and we had layoffs, and morale was really low, which isn't too uncommon for startup companies. And I remember Joe was like, you should look for another place to work. But, for me, like I have a strong sense of commitment and grit. So I felt like I should just stick it out for a little. So I wasn't really open. And then, Joe would send me all these job postings from Glassdoor. It's just like message after message, and I kind of like ignore it. And then all of a sudden he's like, okay, if you're gonna look at any of them, this is the one you should look at. So I was like, okay, fine. Like I will look at it. And I remember I read the job description, and it was for SalesLoft. And I really loved what they put on their job description, which is like,
really?
So yeah, I mean, like what can you say about a job posting that can be so attractive? But I don't know. I was hooked on it, and I was like, okay.
So do you remember what it said?
It was all focused on the culture.
Okay.
And that sounded really appealing to me.
I see. Okay.
Especially because I was at a company where the culture was like really tanking. So I was like, all right, I'm going to apply. I mean, I don't even know if I'm going to get in, but why not? So I like brushed up my resume, put together a cover letter. I don't know if people even do cover letters these days anymore, but I sent it in, and I heard back, and I was really surprised because in the past I've applied to so many jobs, and sometimes like you wouldn't even hear back.
Right. Wait, what was this position for at SalesLoft initially?
Yeah, it was for a senior project manager.
Okay.
So they were creating something called the PMO, which is a department called the Project Management Office.
Okay. I see.
Yeah. So the person who was hiring for that position was just a team of one. His name is Nate, and he was technically the director of PMO, but it was just him, and he needed another project manager to come on. So he was looking for a senior PM. And the SalesLoft hiring process is extremely rigorous. You go through like a call with the recruiter, a call with the hiring manager. You'll go through, we have something called like a core values interview, where there's two random people that kind of give you a culture interview and make sure you're a culture fit.
I've heard of these. Like, and I feel like it's so like new age and like millennial. You know what I mean? Like what I mean by that is if I explain that to my dad, even though he works at a company where he's very like he has a title and stuff, and I know that he doesn't do culture interviews. Like I know he would be like, "What in the world is that?" But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So we had they have culture interviews, and sometimes you end up having an interview with like one of the like C-suite executives, and it's an extremely rigorous process. And so I embarked on that journey, and I had so much fun. It's so crazy to say it because I hate, the whole job application process, the interviewing process. But with SalesLoft, it was just such a good experience. They just made it so engaging, so personal, like people cared. And even the interview, like the more formal interview, it's called a top grade interview. And it's not a series of like, tell me your strengths and weaknesses. It's not the typical interview process. What they do is they start from the bottom or the back of your resume, and they ask you like questions about like you. And so they'll be like, oh, like, why did you major in this? And tell me about your first job. And what was that like? And basically it becomes a dialogue where you just tell your story. And you're not,
Cool.
yeah, it's very cool. Um,
Is
so
this
that's
common at other companies?
I think it's more and more common. It's called a top grade interview. So if you
Okay.
search it, I think you'll be able to find it. But yeah, that's kind of the process. And I remember I just enjoyed like sharing my story with
Hmm.
my future boss, and it was a really good experience. And then you know, surely enough, they called me and they gave me an offer, and so I started. Yep, working as a project manager. Came on, I had no idea what we were doing, and oh man, it was so much fun because my boss and I were just creating new things, and he put me on some of the most technical projects where I again just had no idea what I was doing, and I just had to lean into my team members on the
Hmm.
project.
Hmm.
And the cool thing about project management is you don't have to be the subject matter expert and you don't have to know everything, like all the
Hmm.
technical things. Um, because your stakeholders or your team members, they'll help you identify like what needs to get done.
Hmm.
So it's not like I'm just by myself trying to figure out the whole project plan of what we're trying to do. But the team will come together, you collaborate, you come up with the plan together. And then my job is just say like, all right, where are we with this? Where are we with this?
Hmm.
When are you going to
Hmm.
get this done? This is behind schedule, and it's a very interactive thing. So
Yeah. So like it sounds great, but I'm gonna be honest, it sounds a little bit stressful. Like
oh
especially I
yeah,
feel like at a at a company that's as large as SalesLoft. So I have a few questions.
yeah.
Um, so okay, so one of my questions actually is you started working at SalesLoft and you said that everyone comes together and
Hmm.
collaborates. However, um making sure people meet their deadlines and things, like, have you had like conflict? I don't want to put you on the spot. Maybe you can't answer
You
this because you're
can.
going
No,
back to
you
work
could.
tomorrow. But like, have
You're
you ever had
fine.
like, conflict within that, like, deadlines being met and then someone maybe being like, hey, project manager, I can't get that done. Or I don't know
Hmm.
how it works,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
yeah, what happens?
So I think people would answer differently than me, because my boss used to tell me like, Grace, you're too nice. And I'm like, what does that mean? It's like, and I think for him, it's like, if you're too nice, people aren't going to take you seriously and things aren't going to get done, kind of thing.
Hmm.
And I think that's a common assumption that people make. But for me, it's like what's most important is the relationship that I have with each person.
Hmm.
And so if I know that someone is lacking, then I focus on that relationship. And I try to reason with them and use and meet them on their terms. So it's like, all right, Sean, we're running behind on this project. It's March 2nd, and this was supposed to be done a week ago. And a lot of times these conversations happen one-on-one as
Hmm.
opposed to me calling them out in front of everybody,
Sure,
because I
right.
think that's not as productive, which you
Yes.
can do. There's nothing wrong with that. Um, but yeah, I'll have an honest dialogue and say, hey, like, what can I do to help you? And what is a realistic timeline? And I want you to tell me when you're going to get this done. And I'm going to
Hmm.
hold you accountable to your word. So you tell me. And then, like, what can they say?
Right.
No, right?
Right.
I'm trying to help them
Yeah,
do their
right,
job.
right,
And so I
yeah.
think when they see it as a partnership and not like as someone top down trying to dictate what they need to get done, um, they meet you halfway, and then it becomes much easier to keep
Sure,
them on
yeah.
track, because
Right.
then you're like, all right, this is
Yeah.
coming, and they're like, I know it's coming, and and then they get it done. And
Yeah.
um I don't know, time and time again, that's worked really well for me. So
Okay, yeah. I mean that would work better for me if you were like my manager in that way. I would feel like I think I would be upset, if you handled it any differently. And so it would be hard for me to go to work, I feel like. So yeah, that
Yeah.
seems much wiser in your approach. Okay, and then you said also like in several occasions where you started a job, you'd kind of be like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? And you end up doing it. But like, I would imagine there are a lot of people, maybe even listening today, that have felt that way or maybe even feeling like that right now. Maybe they've started a new job. So it's like you don't know what you're doing, but I'm assuming people have helped you along the way. However, how did you like manage just the expectation of the job? Do you know what I'm saying or no?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Like,
do.
okay.
My answer is lots of prayer.
Yes.
I mean, because for me, even with SalesLoft, I know it was a door that God opened. It wasn't something that I did to get in, because the chance of getting hired without a referral, without knowing someone on the inside, is 1%. Like it's impossible to get in. And so I mean, the fact that I found the position, or Joe found it, I applied, I got in, like everything was so smooth. I just knew that, God was opening that door and this new chapter for me. And every time I get thrown into these uncertain situations, I truly get through it with prayer. And I'm always like, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I know I really, really don't. And it's just faith. Faith is what gets me through. And I believe that God gives me wisdom to figure it out. And I don't necessarily like see the whole thing, but all of a sudden I'll be thinking, I'll be racking my brain, like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden I'll be like, maybe I should try this. And I just get a random idea. Maybe I should do this. And then I'll lean into it. And then it ends up becoming really successful. And then again, I know that wasn't me, but it was, something that the Lord enabled me to do and gave me the wisdom to do it.
Yeah, and I think something you said just now to kind of sparked something in my own brain about, you said it wasn't by like, you didn't have a connection with SalesLoft and it was truly God that opened the door. And I think even just knowing that it was God that did it and being confident in your situation right now is like, hey, like, even though I don't know the answer, I know God placed me here for a reason. So I'm not going to give up. And I'm just going to have faith that the answers will come. And I think, for anyone listening right now, it's like, I mean, you and I feel like talk about it all the time, just on a personal level. It's like believing that the situation that you're in right now is with purpose and knowing that God will give you the tools that you need to get through this current situation, you know? Yeah, I guess, yes, that's
yes. No, there are so many times where I literally tell the Lord, like, God, you brought me here. You have to take care of me. Know, I'm like, this is your doing. Like, and so, I appeal to him and, make an appeal to say, you got to take care of me. You brought me here. And so, you got to give me the wisdom and the insight. And he
does. Yes.
Every time.
It's awesome. It's awesome. Okay, and then my other question when you were talking that came into my head was, so you were talking about your time at the aquarium, before all of this, right? And I've been in those times where it's like, what is happening with my life right now?
Like, what am I doing?
Like, what is this lull in my life? Like, so like thinking back to your aquarium days, and you even said, admittedly just now, it's like, I was wondering, like, is this the extent of my admin life? And like, okay, I think my question is, again, I think there are probably people listening, like those post-grad, guys, like
Yes.
that are adulting officially and are like, what is this life that I have right now? Like,
Yeah.
but then, this is where you are now today,
Mm-hmm.
and God has brought you to this
Mm-hmm.
place. Like, could you expand a little bit on maybe your emotional or even just like psychological state during your days at the aquarium, and then
Mm-hmm.
like realizing you've come to a place where you're able to support your boss in the way to carry out his vision now, which you felt
Mm-hmm.
called to in Chicago. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
really like full circle, but
Right.
we
Right.
have to go through those maybe lulls in our life before we get
Yeah.
to where we are today. But yeah, like emotionally, like where were you at and how were you
Mm-hmm.
able to kind of grit your way through it?
Mm-hmm. So I think when I look back at the Grace who worked at the aquarium,
Mm-hmm.
um, I didn't necessarily think I was destined for greatness or to do
Mm-hmm.
more. For me, it was again just being faithful every day, being faithful and just loving people and serving people. And so even my time at the aquarium, it like wasn't a wash. It wasn't like
Mm-hmm.
a waste of time. It wasn't even kind of a lull. It was just like, all right, I guess this is where God wants me to be.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah.
I'm called to love my coworkers and build intentional relationships with them. I still keep in touch with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, it was just about being faithful to every day and just being grateful every day. And I think that is what carried me here. And in some aspects, I think because I had that season, I know where I am today is a God thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
not because like I went to a prestigious college and landed an amazing job and then hence my career, has just taken off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of questions. I wasn't sure. I didn't know what I wanted to do. But it was just, having a heart of gratitude and just being faithful and leaning in and just trusting that the Lord has plans for me and that He loves me. And that's where my identity comes from. And it's enough.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I look back at my time at the aquarium and I think career wise, it just seems kind of random that I was there when I
Right.
look back. But at the same time, again, because I've been through that season, I know where I am today is
Mm.
not something that I've achieved with my acumen, but it's just, God just being faithful.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's awesome. So, what do you like about your job? I mean, you named a lot of things, but what is the
Hmm.
best part you feel like?
Best part. Best part is when something gets done.
Yes.
Because there's so many meetings, so many discussions,
Sure, yeah.
and so much planning, and so much thought, and so much like so many late nights. But when we're able to achieve really good results, especially like for our customers, who again I see it as a way of serving these people. When they're able to realize success and results and return on investment, that's like so gratifying.
Yeah.
And when they experience it, like they're also grateful. And yeah, and when people are grateful, I feel awesome. And I
Yeah.
feel like I've helped them and helped them yeah, realize impact and yeah, gets me really excited.
Yeah, definitely. And you've mentioned like, being able to carry out vision and impact people's lives. And it reminded me of another question I wanted to ask you is, um, you mentioned that you wished you had known about project management when you were younger.
Hmm.
Maybe, I'm curious, like, do you feel like there are certain like attributes or characteristics or personality traits that you feel like are strengths in your job or like very effective in what you do?
Hmm. I think soft skills are extremely
Mm,
important. And it bleeds into like EQ, emotional intelligence, as well as communication skills, that relationship building. I think Project Management Institute would say that 90% of project management is communication. And
mm.
so, yeah, if anyone's interested in project management, I think those soft skills are extremely important to be successful.
Okay. That's good to know. So if you are a person that is a good communicator, maybe this is something you might want to look into. But before I end our time together, I usually ask people um, if there any is there any advice that you'd give somebody that is maybe thinking about project management. Oh,
Mhm.
and also like before we go into that, like, is there anything you would have done differently if, I mean, I know that obviously we've talked about how God's control and sovereignty has been over your life and there's
Right.
nothing you maybe would have done differently, but
Yeah.
maybe if you had known about project management in college, uh, is there like something you study or do you know?
I think you could study. Oh shoot, I just forgot.
It's
Drawing a
okay.
blank.
It's okay.
Yeah. There are majors though, like even industrial engineering or certain,
Oh,
yeah, certain backgrounds that I think help you, kind of get your foot in the door
I see. Okay. Okay.
into project management. Yeah.
Okay. Do you think you would have done that?
I did wish like that somebody would have told me what industrial engineering was,
Sure.
or yeah,
Yes.
certain majors that would have led me into project management. Yeah, I remember thinking, I wish somebody would have told me this was a thing, and
Yeah.
this is a career path, and this is how you get there. And yeah, I had no idea though at the time. So
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah. So do you have any personal advice? It doesn't have to be about project
mhm.
management, just life
Yeah,
advice in general.
just let's see. I think when you care and you love people, you do end up becoming successful,
Mm.
because yeah, people will care back, and when you're able to care for the same thing and you have a common goal, you're able to accomplish a lot. But also, the relationship piece is, I think, the most important.
Yeah. That's great advice. It's really good advice that no one actually has given so far. So, but no, in all honesty, I think that's something that many people forget, especially in a time where, we're told to be the best and fight for what we want and just
Yeah,
take
for
it,
sure. Hmm.
and it's so easy to just forget that people have feelings and
Right.
they have pasts, and they have parents and just they're just like us, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's really great. um I know I said that was the last question and I'm so sorry, but
You're fine.
I find value in this conversation because you wear a lot of hats as well, and I'm curious, and I think other people would want to know too, as a mom of two,
Hmm.
and uh, another occupation. It's an occupation, really, a pastor's wife. That hat, and working full time. Like, yeah, like how do you do it? Like, what are like? I guess I'll just ask like this: like, what is one of your biggest like obstacles
Hmm.
in kind of wearing all three hats? And how do you like how do you do it? I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I
No,
feel like
that's a
I know
great
the answer to
question.
the last part. How do you do it? But like the first part, like what is like kind of a major obstacle for you as far as like, I mean, because you have 100% of you is required with each hat that you wear. It's not
Yeah.
like you give and take a little bit from each
Right.
thing.
Right. Biggest obstacle is always me,
Mm,
because I expect perfection. And so then I stress myself out. And then I feel like I'm burning out, and then I feel like I'm letting everyone down. So that's that mindset, I think, is my biggest obstacle. How do I deal with it? I've learned to not be perfect. I've learned to let things fall. I've learned to fail and just embrace it, and it's okay. But in that process, I've learned how to prioritize what's most important in that moment, and sometimes it's not my family, and that's where Joe and I have to make sure we're on the same page, and he can cover when I need help, and then be able to prioritize a client meeting at 8 p.m. or just kind of leaning into asking the Lord, like, what is the most faithful thing that I should be doing right now? And just committing to it. And sometimes I have to let other things drop, and sometimes I have to let people be disappointed. And I just learned that that's okay.
Yeah, it is okay. I'm also learning that it's okay.
Great.
Well, Grace, thank you so much for your transparency today and this conversation that truly for me as your friend was extremely insightful. I learned so much about your job and what you do, even though it's so stressful for me to hear about. Like, I know you handle it well, but for me, I always get like, oh my gosh, like, how do you do everything? But I think I learned so much about project management and how much you love it. You love it, right?
I do love it. Yeah.
Yeah, like, isn't it like
a labor of love?
Yeah. That's a perfect term for it. It's perfect. But yeah, thank you again for this conversation today.
Of course. Thank you, Blair.
Yeah, of course. It was an honor. So you guys, if you have any questions about project management, I know a person and she's great. Her name is Grace. So please feel free to contact me, or I will get you a way to contact her directly. You can DM us, or you can email me at podcastwigu@gmail.com. Thanks, guys. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.